I remember the day our astronomers first detected human radio signals. I was a junior xenoanalyst at the Valari Institute of Interstellar Studies, and the excitement that rippled through our crystalline halls was palpable. A new spacefaring species. But that initial excitement quickly turned to horror as we began to understand exactly what we were dealing with. The creatures called humans had evolved on a planet we would classify as utterly uninhabitable. Earth, as they called it, was a nightmare world of extreme temperature variations, crushing gravity, and an atmosphere thick with corrosive oxygen. The fact that any sentient life could emerge from such a hellscape was terrifying enough. But what truly frightened us was how they had not just survived their death world, they had mastered it. I still remember presenting my findings to the High Council, my translucent appendages trembling as I projected images of human, extreme sports. Beings deliberately jumping from high altitudes, swimming in frozen waters, running vast distances across scorching deserts. The council members' bioluminescence flickered with dismay. These deathworlders, I explained, view activities that would kill most species as recreation. They voluntarily expose themselves to conditions that would destroy our bodies, simply for what they call fun. The council's horror deepened when I showed them human warfare. While we Valari had evolved past physical conflict millennia ago, humans had turned combat into an art form. They had weapons that could level cities, yet they still trained in hand-to-hand combat. They had automated drones, yet they still deployed living soldiers. They had nuclear weapons, yet they still carried knives. Most disturbing, I continued, is their ability to adapt to almost any environment. They can survive in temperatures ranging from near freezing to scorching hot. They can eat almost anything organic. They can heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. And they never, ever stop advancing. The Council's decision was swift and unanimous. Earth would be classified as a restricted zone. No contact was to be made. The humans were too unpredictable, too resilient, too dangerous. We would observe from afar, hoping they would never develop faster than light travel. But fate, as humans would say, had other plans. The first signs of trouble came from our outer colonies. Strange ships had been spotted in the nether regions of space, areas we had long considered too hostile for any living beings to traverse. The ships were crude by our standards, but they moved with purpose, mapping gravitational anomalies and cosmic radiation patterns. When we finally intercepted one of their transmissions, my blood ran cold. The language was unmistakably human. They had not only achieved FTL travel, they had already begun exploring some of the most dangerous regions of known space. I was tasked with monitoring their expansion. Day after day, I watched as they pushed further into the void, establishing outposts in regions we had deemed uninhabitable. They built stations in radiation-soaked asteroid fields, colonized worlds with crushing gravity, and even constructed habitats inside gas giants. Nothing seemed to stop them. They are coming closer to our territory, I warned the Council. It's only a matter of time before they detect our presence. The Council, in their wisdom, began preparations for the inevitable encounter. We upgraded our defensive systems, though we knew they would be useless against a species that treated death as a mere inconvenience. We prepared diplomatic protocols, though we feared no amount of negotiation could contain their relentless expansion. Then came the day that changed everything. Our long-range sensors detected a massive anomaly heading toward our core worlds. At first, we thought it was a natural phenomenon, a rogue planet perhaps, or a collapsed star. But as it drew closer, we realized the terrible truth. It was a nexus tear, a rupture in space-time that consumed everything in its path. Our scientists calculated that it would reach our homeworld within a standard year. We had no defense against such a phenomenon. No way to stop it. No way to escape it. In that moment of desperation, one council member made an unprecedented suggestion. Perhaps, she said, her bioluminescence pulsing with uncertainty, we should consider contacting the Deathworlders. After all, they seem to thrive on impossible challenges. The debate raged for days. Contact the humans? The very idea went against centuries of policy. Yet as the Nexus tier drew closer, consuming entire star systems in its path, we realized we had no choice. I was chosen to draft the message, a plea for help from a civilization that had deliberately hidden from them. As I composed our first official communication with humanity, I couldn't help but wonder, would they even respond? And if they did, would their help prove more devastating than the catastrophe we faced? Little did I know, this decision would not only save our species, but fundamentally change how we viewed our place in the galaxy. The Deathworlders were coming, and nothing would ever be the same. The human response to our distress call came faster than anyone expected. Within 3 solar cycles, a fleet of their ships arrived at our designated meeting point, a nebulous safe distance from both our worlds and the approaching Nexus tier. I was among the delegation chosen to make first contact, though chosen might be too generous a term. I was the only one who had studied them extensively enough to predict their behavior, or so we hoped. The human ships were nothing like we expected. While our vessels were elegant crystalline structures that harmonized with space itself, theirs looked like they had been built to punch through it. Sharp angles, reinforced hulls, and what were unmistakably weapon systems, lots of them. Yet they had answered our call for help without demanding anything in return. This paradox would be the first of many that challenged our understanding of humans. Their primary vessel's docking procedure was almost violent by our standards, magnetic clamps slamming into place with enough force to make our crystalline hull resonate. When the airlock cycled, I instinctively dimmed my bioluminescence in preparation for whatever nightmarish Deathworlder would emerge. Captain Sarah Chin was shorter than I had imagined a Deathworlder would be. She walked with a fluid grace that seemed at odds with her species' reputation, though I couldn't help but notice the sidearm strapped to her hip, a grim reminder of their violent nature. Her dark eyes scanned our delegation, and her lips curved into what I would later learn was a reassuring smile. On behalf of the United Earth Government, she said, her words translated by our systems, we come to offer assistance. She paused, then added something that would become emblematic of our entire relationship with humans. We've brought engineers, scientists, and coffee. Lots of coffee. The following days were a crash course in human behavior that challenged everything we thought we knew about them. Yes, they were from a death world. Yes, they were capable of tremendous violence. But they were also capable of tremendous compassion, creativity, and cooperation. Their scientists worked tirelessly alongside ours, studying the Nexus tier. Their engineers proposed solutions that seemed insane until they worked. And Captain Chin, she showed a patience with our fears and prejudices that I hadn't thought possible from a Deathworlder. You know what's funny? She said to me one cycle, as we watched human and Valari teams working together. We were just as nervous about meeting you. All those stories about advanced aliens looking down on us primitive humans. Turns out we were both scared of each other for no good reason. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The first major crisis came when one of our station's environmental systems failed. The temperature in several sections began to rise to levels lethal to Valari. Without hesitation, a human engineering team rushed into heat that would kill us, to make repairs. They emerged hours later, drenched in what they called sweat, but alive and successful. It was the first time many of us saw their legendary endurance up close. Their solution to the Nexus tier was equally characteristic of their species. While our scientists had been trying to find ways to avoid or deflect it, the humans proposed something radically different. They wanted to collapse it. It's like a hurricane, their lead scientist, Dr. Marcus Wong, explained. You can't stop it, but you can disrupt the conditions that allow it to exist. The fact that they had experience with phenomena capable of leveling their cities was both terrifying and reassuring. Their plan was audacious. They proposed creating a series of artificial gravity wells to disrupt the tier's structure, essentially making it tear itself apart. The energy requirements were enormous, the timing had to be perfect, and the margin for error was non-existent. In other words, as Captain Chen put it, just another Tuesday. The most surprising aspect wasn't their technical solution, though. It was how they approached working with us. Despite their reputation as aggressive Deathworlders, they actually listened to our concerns. They incorporated our technology with theirs, adapted their plans to account for our limitations, and most shockingly, trusted us to do our part. When one of our engineers expressed doubt about a critical calculation, Dr. Wang spent hours going through it with them, not because he had to, but because he wanted everyone to feel confident in the plan. This from a species we had feared would simply bulldoze over any opposition. As the day of implementation approached, I found myself in what the humans called the war room, watching as they made final preparations. Captain Chen noticed my bioluminescence flickering with anxiety. Having doubts? She asked. Not about the plan, I admitted. About how wrong we were about your species. We thought you were simply dangerous. We never considered that your ability to survive might make you the greatest allies we could hope for. She laughed, a sound that had once terrified us but now seemed reassuring. That's the thing about coming from a death world, she said. You learn pretty quick that survival isn't just about being tough. It's about working together, adapting, and never giving up. Speaking of which, she checked her device. It's time. Ready to save your world? As I watched humans and Valari move to their stations, working together with practiced efficiency, I realized we weren't just saving our world. We were building something new. Something that neither of our species could have achieved alone. The Nexus tier was approaching, and we were about to find out if a partnership between Deathworlders and those who feared them could accomplish the impossible. The moment of truth arrived with what humans would call spectacular chaos. The gravity wells activated in sequence, each one straining our combined technology to its limits. The Nexus tier, that violet-black maw in space-time that had threatened our civilization, began to distort. At first, it seemed our efforts were only making things worse. The tear grew larger, its edges becoming more erratic. That's exactly what we want, Dr. Wang announced, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays. The structural integrity is failing. Just like popping a balloon, sometimes you have to make it bigger before it breaks. I watched in amazement as the humans remained calm despite the apparent escalation of danger. Captain Chen was coordinating between teams, switching effortlessly between giving orders and cracking jokes to keep morale high. It was a side of Deathworlders we had never considered, their ability to find humor in the face of extinction. The tear began to collapse in on itself, exactly as the humans had predicted. But then something went wrong. One of the gravity wells destabilized, threatening to create a chain reaction that could have been worse than the original tear. Without hesitation, a human engineer named Rodriguez manually adjusted the field generators, exposing himself to enough radiation to kill a Valari instantly. Just a little sunburn, he said afterward, while being treated in medical. You should see what we deal with during solar maintenance back home. That incident marked a turning point in our understanding of humans. We had known they were physically resilient, but we began to see that their true strength lay in their willingness to risk everything to protect others, even aliens they had just met. The next few cycles were filled with what the humans called cultural exchange. They were intensely curious about our civilization, asking endless questions about our crystalline architecture, our photosynthetic biology, and our art. In return, they shared their stories, their music, and, most importantly, their perspective on life. You see, Captain Chen explained during one of our many discussions, growing up on Earth taught us that adversity isn't just something to survive, it's something that makes you stronger. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn, to adapt, to improve. Our scientists were particularly fascinated by human medical technology. While our own medicine focused on prevention and harmony, human medical science seemed to operate on the principle that anything could be fixed, replaced, or enhanced. They had artificial limbs that worked better than natural ones, synthetic organs that could outlast their biological counterparts, and rehabilitation techniques that seemed to defy the very concept of permanent injury. The Deathworlders were teaching us how to truly live. The true test of our newfound alliance came sooner than anyone expected. 3 cycles after the Nexus tier incident, our long-range sensors detected something approaching from deep space, a vast swarm of biomechanical ships unlike anything in our records. The Hive, as we would come to know them, made no attempt at communication. Their ships, organic-looking constructs that seemed to pulse with malevolent life, simply began systematically attacking both human and Valari outposts along the galactic rim. I was in the Joint Command Center with Captain Chen when the first reports came in. The humans' reaction was immediate and decisive. While our council debated the diplomatic implications, the human fleet was already mobilizing. Sometimes you don't get the luxury of perfect information, Jin said, studying the tactical displays. Sometimes you have to act on what you know. Someone's hurting your friends, and you need to make them stop. The first battle showed us yet another side of our human allies. We had seen their capability for violence in historical records, but witnessing it firsthand was something else entirely. Their ships moved with an aggression that seemed reckless until you realized every maneuver was precisely calculated. They didn't just fight, they adapted mid-battle, learning and countering the Hive's tactics in real time. But it was their response to our own military limitations that truly demonstrated their value as allies. Instead of dismissing our forces as too fragile, they developed hybrid tactics that played to our strengths. Our crystalline ships, with their superior sensor capabilities, became their eyes and ears. Their heavily armored vessels provided us with protection we could never achieve on our own. It's like a dance, Rodriguez explained during a strategy session. You've got the grace and precision, we've got the power and endurance. Put them together, and you've got something beautiful and lethal. The Hive proved to be a formidable enemy. Their ships could repair themselves, adapt to our weapons, and coordinate with a hive mind efficiency that was terrifying to behold. But they had never encountered anything like the Human-Valari alliance. When the Hive adapted to our energy weapons, the humans introduced what they called kinetic solutions, essentially, hitting the enemy really hard with really big rocks accelerated to relativistic speeds. When the Hive developed countermeasures to those, we combined our technologies to create weapons that could phase through their defenses. The turning point came during the Battle of the Crystalline Nebula. The Hive had cornered a group of Valari civilian ships attempting to evacuate a research station. The humans, despite being outnumbered 3-1, launched what they called a crazy-enough-to-work plan. Using our crystalline technology to amplify their ship shields, they drove straight into the heart of the Hive fleet. The maneuver should have been suicide. Instead, it became legend. The human ships, glowing with combined human-Valari tech, carved through the Hive formation like a plasma torch through vapor. See, that's the thing about Deathworlders, Captain Chen told me afterward, as we watched repair crews work on the battle-scarred ships. We don't just survive bad odds, we take those odds, turn them upside down, and make them work for us instead. The Hive, for all their biological and technological sophistication, couldn't adapt to the sheer unpredictability of human tactics combined with Valari precision. They had evolved to fight conventional wars. This was anything but conventional. The final battle took place in orbit around one of our colony worlds. The Hive had committed their remaining forces to one massive assault. It should have been their moment of triumph. Instead, it became their last stand. The Human-Valari fleet met them with everything we had learned from fighting together. Our ships moved in perfect synchronization, each species compensating for the other's weaknesses. The humans' seemingly reckless maneuvers were perfectly calculated by our sensors. Our precise energy weapons were devastatingly effective thanks to human targeting algorithms. When the last Hive ship fell silent, the celebration that followed transcended species barriers. Humans and Valari embraced, shared drinks, carefully separated by environmental suits, and traded war stories. The fear that had once defined our relationship was gone, replaced by something far stronger, trust forged in battle. Looking out at the debris field that had once been the Hive fleet, Captain Chen said something that captured the essence of our transformation. You know what made this victory possible? Not our weapons, not our tactics, but the fact that we stopped seeing each other as threats and started seeing each other as family. The Hive's defeat marked more than just a military victory. It proved that the most powerful force in the galaxy wasn't technology or biology, or even the harsh crucible of a death world. It was the ability to overcome fear and prejudice, to learn from each other, and to stand together against any threat. The Deathworlders had become our greatest defenders, and we had become something more than we ever thought possible. The aftermath of the Hive War, as it came to be known, brought changes that would have been unthinkable just a few cycles earlier. The Valari High Council, in an unprecedented move, offered to establish permanent human settlements within our territory. More surprisingly, many humans accepted. The first joint colony was established on a world we had previously considered uninhabitable. To us, its gravity was crushing, its temperature fluctuations extreme. To the humans, it was a bit like Montana. They helped us build environmental domes that allowed both species to coexist comfortably, and something remarkable began to happen. Dr. Wong led a team that started combining our medical technologies. Valari regenerative techniques, merged with human bioengineering, created treatments that could heal injuries we had thought permanent. Our understanding of electromagnetic fields, combined with human neurological research, led to breakthroughs in treating mental trauma for both species. It's ironic, Dr. Wong said during a joint medical conference. We spent so long being afraid of each other that we never realized how perfectly our knowledge could complement each other. Your harmony with natural forces, our drive to push boundaries, together, they're revolutionary. The integration wasn't always smooth. Cultural misunderstandings were common. Humans found our meditation chambers boring. We found their entertainment centers overwhelming. They couldn't understand why we needed absolute silence during our photosynthesis periods. We couldn't comprehend their need for constant physical activity. But these differences led to innovations. Human engineers designed quiet gyms with sound-dampening technology for their workout needs. Our architects created hybrid spaces that could shift between human and Valari environmental preferences. Each challenge became an opportunity for creative solutions. The most profound changes came in education. Young Valari, traditionally taught to seek harmony and avoid risk, now had human instructors who encouraged controlled experimentation. Human children, naturally inclined toward physical solutions, learned our methods of electromagnetic perception and mental discipline. "Watch this," Captain Chin said one day, leading me to a classroom. Inside, human and Valari children were working together on a project. The humans were helping their Valari classmates overcome their instinctive fear of heights using virtual reality technology, while the Valari children were teaching the humans to sense electromagnetic fields through meditation techniques. "They don't see each other as deathworlders or crystals," she observed. "They just see friends who are different but equal." Trade between our species flourished. Humans coveted our crystalline technology and art. We were fascinated by their entertainment and fashion. Cultural exchange programs became popular. Humans learned our bioluminescent language. We began to appreciate their music, though we had to adjust the volume significantly. Even our military forces transformed. Joint training programs produced warriors who combined human tactical instincts with Valari precision. Our ships began incorporating human-designed redundancy systems, while their vessels adapted our crystalline sensor technology. The result was a defense force unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. But perhaps the most significant change was in how we viewed ourselves. The Valari had always prided ourselves on our stability and harmony. Contact with humans taught us that true strength comes not from avoiding change, but from adapting to it. Meanwhile, humans learned that their Deathworld-born resilience didn't have to mean constant struggle. Sometimes, harmony could be found in accepting limitations. You know what's really changed? Rodriguez reflected during a maintenance session on one of our hybrid ships. "We used to think being from a death world made us tough. You showed us that real toughness isn't just about surviving harsh conditions, it's about maintaining compassion and wisdom despite them." The council chambers, once a place of rigid tradition, now hosted lively debates about the future of our alliance. The same council that had once voted to avoid all contact with humans now regularly sought their input on matters of galactic importance. "We feared that contact with deathworlders would destroy our way of life," one council elder admitted. "Instead, it revealed aspects of ourselves we never knew existed. Our capacity for growth, our ability to adapt, our strength when united with others, these were qualities we had, but never fully realized." As I updated the Xenoanalysis archives, I found myself rewriting entire sections on human behavior. The original warnings about their dangerous nature remained, but now they were balanced with observations about their loyalty, creativity, and capacity for friendship. The term Deathworlder itself began to change meaning. What had once been a classification of fear became almost a mark of respect, not for their physical capabilities, but for their ability to thrive in adversity while maintaining their humanity. The galaxy was changing, and we were changing with it. The alliance between humans and Valari had become more than a mere diplomatic arrangement. It was proving that the greatest barriers in the universe weren't physical or biological, but the ones we built in our minds. And those barriers, like so many others, were no match for the combined will of Deathworlders and those who had learned to call them friends. A decade after our first contact with humans, I stood in the newly constructed Galactic Unity Center, a massive structure that embodied everything our alliance had achieved. Built using both human and Valari architecture, it featured areas suitable for both species and technological innovations that would have seemed impossible years ago. The occasion was the first interspecies scientific congress, and I watched as human and Valari scientists presented their joint discoveries. The most remarkable presentation came from a young human Valari research team who had cracked the code of instantaneous communication using a combination of human quantum computing and our crystalline resonance technology. The old Valari would have taken centuries to achieve this through careful, methodical research, my human colleague, Dr. Sarah Chin, daughter of the now Admiral Chin, observed. The old humans would have rushed in and probably blown up half a solar system trying. Together, we got it right in just 3 years. The success of our alliance had not gone unnoticed. Other species that had previously avoided contact with Deathworlders began reaching out. The humans, true to their nature, welcomed each new contact with enthusiasm, while we Valari provided diplomatic guidance to ease their transitions. Our joint colonies had become models of interspecies cooperation. The environmental domes had evolved into entire cities where multiple species could live comfortably together. Human children grew up speaking our bioluminescent language as naturally as their own, while young Valari learned to appreciate the controlled chaos of human sports, though they preferred to watch rather than participate. The military cooperation that had defeated the Hive evolved into a peacekeeping force that protected developing civilizations. Human ships, armed with Valari sensors, patrolled the galaxy's dangerous regions, ensuring that no other species would have to face threats alone as we once did. But perhaps the most profound change was philosophical. The concept of a death world itself was being reevaluated. Humans helped us understand that adversity, when faced with courage and wisdom, could be a source of strength rather than fear. In my final report to the Council before retirement, I wrote, "The greatest lesson we learned from humans wasn't about survival or technology. It was about perspective. What we saw as limitations, they saw as challenges. What we feared as dangers, they embraced as opportunities. They taught us that the true measure of a civilization isn't its ability to avoid difficulties, but its capacity to grow through them." As I watch the new generation of human and Valari children playing together in the Unity Center's gardens, I see a future that neither of our species could have imagined alone. The Deathworlders we once feared had become our greatest teachers, showing us that true strength lies not in isolation, but in connection. A human child is teaching her Valari friend to climb a tree, safely monitored by both sets of parents, while nearby, a Valari child helps his human friends understand the electromagnetic songs of native crystal formations. They don't see Deathworlders and crystals, they just see family. And perhaps that's the greatest victory of all, not over external threats or physical limitations, but over the fear that once kept us apart. In the end, it wasn't our differences that defined us, but our willingness to look past them and see the strength that lies in unity. The galaxy is a vast and often dangerous place. But together, we face it not with fear, but with hope, curiosity, and the unshakable knowledge that there is no challenge too great for those who dare to trust, to learn, and to grow together. The Deathworlders had become our closest allies, and in doing so, they helped us discover strengths we never knew we had. Our future now stretches before us, filled with possibilities that neither species could have achieved alone. And somewhere, on a distant Earth that we once feared to even approach, young humans are learning about the crystalline aliens who taught them that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in conquering adversity, but in finding harmony within it. The story of humans and Valari had become more than just a tale of overcoming prejudice. It had become a testament to the power of unity and diversity, a beacon of hope for all species who dare to look past their fears and embrace the unknown. Together, we had not just survived, we had transcended.